Hey, Anthony, thanks for being on the show.
Jay, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So, this show is all about kind of speaking into the lives of other business owners and helping them understand how to build a business that lasts. And you guys as a company are celebrating your 60th anniversary. So first of all, congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
That is a huge accomplishment. I mean, to be around that many decades, that's a company that has gone through all kinds of economic cycles and technology changes and cultural changes and everything else. So I'm really excited to dig into our conversation today. I know you have been the CEO there for quite a while. Tell us a little bit about your kind of leadership role there and kind of how you ended up where you are today leading Pen Chasers.
Sure. I've been with our company working for our company for 30 years.
Wow.
And I'm a second generation proprietor of the company. So my stepfather, William F. Morris, came to the company when he was 14 years old. And back then in 1958, the building, our original bowling center, Regal Lanes in Tampa, was opened by the Palazzolo family, which had relocated to Florida from Michigan. And my stepfather went to work for him when he was 14 years old. He literally, his job was to empty ashtrays and do that all day long for a quarter an hour at the time.
Wow.
And as he grew older, by the time he had gotten into his early 20s, he had asked the family, they'd asked him, if he wanted more money, wanted this, wanted a raise, things like that. And he had always said, pay me in stock. So by the mid-'80s, their family had, basically the men that were in charge had died. And my father was left with the business. And I came to work in 1989. And from there, I got to experience kind of what the business was all about and loved it. I have 6 other siblings, which along with myself are the shareholders of the company now. We bought the company from our dad, and we've been operating it under the Pen Chasers brand, which we developed in 2006 for the last 13 years. So we've, really been able to take a legacy company in a 100-plus-year-old industry and remain competitive by keeping our focus on our customer, as I think any of your listeners and anybody who's in business will, say, hey, we're focused on the customer. But along with focusing on the customer, making the changes necessary to stay contemporary and to stay relevant as the company matures. And it's been fun to develop a brand kind of out of nothing. At the same time, we've been able to transcend some of the stereotypes about the bowling industry. And whenever you're in an industry that's as old as the bowling industry, there's only a few of them, like churches or government that kind of get past 100 years these days. So it's kind of on us as a burden to remain creative, to stay relevant.
Yeah, that is super interesting. I think it's amazing to hear a story like that of your dad, starting at the age of 14 and then kind of working his way up. I think it's so easy for people to look at companies that have been around for a long time and not really know the depth of where people came from and what they've been through to get to where they are. And I find that often there's a lot of hard work behind the scenes that makes that happen. So there's quite a few things I want to dig into here as it relates to what you've talked about. One is just the whole family business thing. That's a complex, or can be a complex thing sometimes when you have family involved in business. I'd love to talk about that. And then I also want to talk about just how you guys have been able to adapt over time, because I think this is a big problem for a lot of people and will continue to be a big problem because technology is advancing at such a rapid pace. How do we take something like bowling, which has been around, like you said, forever, and make it something that's still appealing to people that they go, yeah, I'm still interested in showing up for this, paying money for this, and making it kind of a regular event, hopefully. So let's delve into the family business side first, and then we'll come back to the
Sure.
bowling piece. A lot of people out there have probably either done business with family or tried to do business with family. And I've heard plenty of stories where that doesn't go very well. I've also heard plenty where it goes really well. My aunt and uncle work together, and they love working together. And you've got 6 siblings, which obviously there's a lot of personalities involved there and a lot of different, insights and thoughts and feelings, especially when you're dealing with something that your dad owned for a very long time. So what's that been like? And ultimately, what kind of strategies have you found have been successful in kind of negotiating the realities of working with family?
Sure. I think first and foremost, just to give a little bit of history, so of my 6 siblings, I think the very first step that our dad took many years ago is that none of us were ever groomed, made, influenced, cajoled, manipulated into being in the business.
Mm.
And he realized very early on, as being a dad and being our provider, that was his business. That was his lifeblood and his passion. And he didn't go out of his way to have us have that same passion, which I think was the groundwork for making decision as time went by to set us up for success as a family.
Hmm.
And the real key to that is that succession planning was a very, very important part of his daily life early on when we were very small children. So not only providing for us in the present, but creating a framework to provide for us and our heirs in the future as well. So that was really important. And I think any family, the missteps are that they don't think about succession planning until somebody dies.
Yeah.
And that's really a really key part of our success. So that being said, of my 6 other siblings, the 7 of us, 3 of us work in the business. And one of us, my brother Michael, he is a CPA, has a CPA firm, and serves as our CFO. And is, I don't want to say part-time, but obviously he's running his own business on a daily basis.
Sure.
And, is our CFO in terms of, making sure our compliance is in order and all those types of things. And then one other brother, a younger brother, is a whiz on the mechanical property side. So he takes care of basically the investment of the buildings and makes things work. So mechanically. So from that standpoint, none of the other siblings are involved in the business except as shareholders. And another interesting, and very critical decision that our dad made is that once, we came into the position that I was interested in the business, if not, he was going to sell it many years ago. And because I was interested and found myself capable of a leadership position and doing great things on our own, he made it to where only 2 of us have voting stock in the business. And then an attorney, who is our succession planning attorney, is kind of the tiebreaker if we ever needed to do that. But my brother Michael and I have been making the decisions, and I make the daily decisions as the chief executive and managing partner. But anytime that we're, investing heavy dollars or anything that would need that, he and I make those decisions together. And it has worked wonderfully for our family and worked wonderfully for our business.
Well, it sounds like your dad put a lot of wisdom and thought and effort into preparing you all, which I'm selfishly very interested in because I have I run the agency I have run now for 20 years, and I also have 5 young children. So
Uh-huh.
the idea of what they're going to do next is, intriguing to me. But I love that he didn't kind of push y'all into that. I actually have a quote at the beginning of my book that I wrote where I dedicated it to the kids, and I said, "Follow your dreams, but remember your dreams don't have to be my dreams." And
Absolutely.
it sounds like that's kind
That's
of
a
what he did.
key piece. None of us grew up thinking that our success as people will be tied to the business or tied to the bowling industry as a success. And although we were very aware and very grateful for the life that bowling has given us, we were always encouraged to follow our dreams. So one of my siblings is a mechanical engineer. Another one is an executive for Unilever. Another sibling is really came to be a maven in the internet car sales world. She's worked for a very large dealership group, but kind of started their internet sales 20 years ago. So, we all have a lot of different things that we do. And he has always encouraged us as children and as adults to follow our passion. And one other real key part for our, part of our success and part of his life success and things that he gave to us is very strong faith.
Yeah.
And strong faith has been the framework that we each can rely on no matter what we're doing in our lives, but it's part of our business. And strong faith allows us to, I would say, give beyond lip service to the fact of that people are the most important things in our business, whether they be staff, family, or guests. And I think that's, something that's really baked into what we do and baked into our DNA.
Wow. Well, it sounds like your dad did an awesome job. So I'm going to do my absolute best to copy him through the next few years as my kids grow up. What are some other big things? Because I just find this fascinating and it's encouraging as well.
Sure.
What are some other big things that you kind of took from your dad that he kind of instilled in you, either in the business or just young in life, that you feel like have helped you kind of grow, and even your siblings sound like they've all done very well for themselves. So, what was it that he kind of encouraged you guys with that allowed you to keep growing as individuals?
Obsessive attention to the little things, to the details. And that was under the context of not everybody's a detail person. And if you're not, have somebody with you that is. So he's not. He's a big idea person, but had an extremely, extremely detail-oriented administrative assistant who helped him navigate that process. I'm not, and I have used other people and also worked extremely hard to be detail-oriented. So at the end of the day, I think the one big lesson business-wise that he left with me is to be obsessive about the details and that the big things work out. Another thing is to be obsessive about the people in our business, and the people, again, being staff, family, and guests. And I think that, from a very young age, when I first started in the business, it was very easy for me to tell that, you just have to be obsessive about the people in the business and all sides of it, not just customers. We've seen plenty of folks kind of flame out being obsessive about customers or end up giving it a very shallow meaning because they're not obsessive about their staff. And I think that's, the things that have led us to be able to change. Our ability to adapt to our surroundings and our business climate would not occur if we were not obsessive about our people.
I love that. And I think it's so critical. I'd love to hear from you, on a practical level, what that looks like, because I hear people say things like this, but then I want to know, like, on a
Sure.
day-to-day basis, what does obsessive about our people look like? What does that mean with regards to how you handle things from a company perspective, hiring, firing, daily care of people? What does that look like for you guys as a company that makes you feel like, hey, we're hitting this goal of being obsessive about our people in a positive way?
Sure. Operationally, that takes on a couple different sides. First and foremost, the hiring and training process. We've learned over the last 10 years, as we're really competing for entry level staff, 80% of our workers are 20 years old and younger.
Mm.
And when you deal with that level of staff, you have to find ways to have it mean something to them. So our selection process is very much based on just happiness and not skills. We can teach people a lot of things, but we can't teach them to be happy about what's going on with them. So we do everything we can to identify happy people first, because we're not splitting atoms. We can basically teach you anything we need to do if you're a happy person. And whether that's to be kind to other people you work with, be kind to the people who pay the money to be in our business and to bowl, we think that really starts with people being happy. And the other side of it is that we've learned specifically in the last 10 years is to always give people the authority to make other people happy. So, so many businesses you see, especially in hospitality, they have these multiple layers of management and responsibility that basically forces the guest to kind of navigate their system to get something done or solved. And part of our rebranding in 2006 was that was the one thing that just was not working for me as a leader in our business, is to constantly have guests seek out, this guru manager to get satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
So we tore all that down, and every single person in our business has the authority to make somebody happy from the get-go. If something's not right, they have the ability to refund their money. If something, and that's our guarantee, basically, that you have a great time or it's on us. Mm. And every single person that works for us has the ability to make that happen and make somebody happy. So those two things, start with happy people and give everybody the authority to make someone happy, are the two kind of rails that we use to solve the people side of our business, both as staff and as guests. And it's something that, it's been fun to watch mature over the last 13 years. When we wrote these things down, number one, my dad thought I was nuts and crazy to give everybody the authority to give away money, basically. And the reality is that's used so infrequently that it's sometimes astounding to me, where I'm saying, hey, are we doing everything we can to make people happy? And it's been kind of fun. Another part on the guest side is to get rid of every rule that doesn't have safety as a priority. So one of the big things about our industry is shoe rental. And, we don't rent shoes to the public. It's kind of, I see it as kind of, grocery stores don't rent you shopping carts.
Right.
So, we tore down a lot of the stereotypical business process that involved the bowling industry, and kind of started from scratch with what happens with a mom and kids who come in the building. And what we found early on when we were doing our research is that sometimes they might spend 20 to 30, 40 minutes before they throw the first ball, because of all the kind of baked in hurdles there were to having a good time. Mm. So we tore all that down and kind of built the experience over again. And that has been a nice piece of our success as well.
That's some awesome stuff. A couple things there that really stood out to me. One is, I love that you said that your dad thought it was crazy and yet you did it anyway, because there's a couple things there that resonate with me. One, you obviously respect your dad and appreciate his wisdom and guidance over the years, but you were
Absolutely.
leader enough to go, hey, things are changing. We have to be able to change with them. And then you said, when we wrote these things down. And that seems like a little thing, but it really resonated with me, because I think so often when we're running along in business, leaders at all stages make the mistake of just not writing down the goals, writing down the vision, writing down the priorities. And there is something about putting those ideas on paper that I think changes them.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you that, so in 2005, basically that was the year that, my dad stepped down and was going to retire from the business and finish the sale of the business to his children and do something else. So in 2005, I felt that, our company was basically everything it could be at the time. And I also felt that being a legacy business model for bowling, which was that we were a league-based business, about 65-70% of our income came from league bowling, which was a historically extremely strong product for the bowling industry and bowling centers in the U.S. market. And what I came to the conclusion is that we'd also experienced about a 5% attrition and decline in league business historically for the previous 10 years. And that wasn't only happening in our business, but it was happening in the bowling industry as a whole nationwide. And that dilemma basically said, hey, we're either going to rethink this business or we're going to be doing something else with the investment of this business and transforming into some other kind of business. So faced with that, we took our executive management team at the time, which many of them are still with us, and my brother and I, and we hired a marketing company out of Chicago called Aspire. And this marketing company, which was run by a woman named Dawn Nicole Baldwin, their expertise was rebranding churches. And my dad had met them because the church he was at, had looked into what they could do to grow their base and kind of change what was happening to them, which was some severe attrition. And they had looked into them. So they ended up not hiring them, but we hired them. And it was an extremely good decision to do that. It was really expensive. And if you think back in 2005, at the time we were, a $5 million company sales wise and had, 3 units. And we basically, spent a couple $100,000 with this company. And they let us know that everything we were doing on the positive side that people really liked were going to be the things that would cement our fate of being out of business within the next 10 years. And that was an eye-opener. And it was something that we, fortunately had the intestinal fortitude to embrace and not argue with. And I think that's where so many companies at times, fall into the trap of thinking that they always know best.
Yeah.
And they get away from who they are. And, at the end of the day, any business and any company, any entrepreneur, any steward of their business is tasked with the survival and success of their business. And whatever changes that makes and whatever twists and turns that accompany that journey, you still have to be responsible to survive and to be profitable. So we heard everything about what we did right that was making us wrong, and we took it and, basically started over and rebranded the company to create something totally different and new in the bowling industry. And I think proof positive of that is that, ultimately a number of other people in our industry started taking the same steps, and now we have a very different bowling industry. And it's all based on the entertainment side of bowling, as well as the food and beverage opportunities that bowling presents. And now we're a totally different company. And we rebranded to the Pin Chasers brand. And we've never had the success that we've had, especially in the last 5 years. But, we weathered the 2007, 2008 mini depression and came out of it. Number one, we made money through it. Number two, we came out of it stronger than we ever were because of that rebranding. And we're, really positioned to grow now, and it's really exciting. But listening to an outside company tell us that what we did well was going to be the thing that would do us in was really hard. And coming through that and starting from scratch and putting into place, formalizing that people equation that my dad had always operated under, but didn't necessarily formalize and write it down. That became basically our playbook, and we call it our playbook. So everybody who works at Pin Chasers is given a playbook, and that playbook, has all of our ways to be successful, policy, procedure, our guiding principles, and it's basically the story of our success. And everything in there, the most important things are scaled down to a business card size credit card, basically, that has the most important principles of our business and a way for staff to remember them. So we hand them out, and at any given time, I can walk up to anybody who works for us and ask them, and if they don't know, they can pull out this index card and read it. And that's really been a key piece to what we do.
I love that. I mean, I might actually steal that idea. I told my wife when I first started this podcast, I was like, selfishly, the good thing for me is I'm going to get to talk to all these different business owners who've been in business for a long time. And I'm just going to get to take great ideas and use them in my business to help my people. So selfishly, I love when I get little nuggets that are really helpful. But everybody out there that's listening, a couple of things I want you guys to hear that Anthony's been talking about that are easy to overlook, I think, in just the midst of a conversation. One is, Anthony, you talked about basically hiring expertise on the outside, but even before that, you were willing to look at your own potential risk and see far enough down the tunnel to kind of go, okay, this is not going to last in its current state. We may have to change. And there's so many companies that didn't do that. I mean, the biggest examples are like, Blockbuster Video. And I just would love to have been in their executive board meetings as Redbox came out and Netflix came out, and they seem, at least from the outside, to have just sat stagnantly. You recognized you had an issue, you sought out expertise to help you solve that issue, and then when they gave you things that you didn't want to hear, you still trusted them because that's why you hired them in the first place, and you followed that guidance, and that has paid great dividends for you. I mean, I think that is just such a big principle that people are not willing sometimes to look to the outside to get feedback. And I know for me, there have been plenty of times where I needed somebody who wasn't inside of the circle to look at it and go, hey, what about this over here? And we're like, oh, I mean, gosh, I didn't realize that. And it's just such a huge impact. So thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely. I think that's when there's plenty of other examples, and the Netflix and Blockbuster example is a very, top of mind example these days. But another side of example is even in the bowling industry. So the Brunswick Corporation, which I think most people will identify with bowling, the Brunswick brand. And I will tell you that when you look at the history of Brunswick's first money 100+ years ago was made in horse and buggy. So they, were a woodworking company. They made carriages and things like that. And at the turn of the century, they started making pool tables and billiards, and then found themselves in the bowling business. And today, they have divested themselves of the bowling business. They leased the brand of Brunswick to the division of their company that made bowling lanes and bowling equipment, and as a capital goods supplier for the bowling industry. But the rest of the company basically became the largest marine and boat manufacturer in the United States, and owned brands like Boston Whaler and Bayliner, Mercury Marine, which is the outboard motor company. They have owned those things for decades. Life Fitness, gym equipment, and that's what the Brunswick company does today. And they even were in the music producing business and had owned the music writing of a lot of the African American acts in the 50s and 60s. Brunswick in the 40s, Brunswick owned them and was in the music business and the music publication business. So, they were kind of a homegrown or industry example of you do what you do to survive and to be profitable, and it may not look what you did to start.
Yeah,
and I think that's a great lesson, and and I see it playing out a lot today. When I look at Google, and the guys that were so incredibly intelligent to create search and to give it, format and formation and make it easier and better, but they didn't really create search. And now I don't even know that, that they said, hey, we're going to be in the advertising business when they created search and created Google. So you have to take what the customer gives you. You have to be where the people are, and you have to do the things that people want and are willing to pay for to be successful today. And, right now we're in the bowling business, but more importantly, we're in the entertainment-based business. We're in the location-based entertainment business.
Mm-hmm.
And as we are going to mature and grow in the next few years, our biggest threats are no longer other bowling businesses or other bowling centers or even movie theaters or restaurants. Our biggest threat is somebody sitting at home with Netflix and binge watching something on their computer or iPad or device. And we have a whole generation of people who only know their device as their entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're faced with some of the biggest threats we've ever been faced with, not simply whether to be entertainment-based bowling or league-based bowling. And league business is still very good business. It's just not 70% of our business anymore.
Right.
But those challenges are going to be what challenge business owners and entrepreneurs from here to eternity is, can you make something compelling enough that somebody wants to buy? And can you change often enough where people want to keep buying? And I think that sometimes it never gets any more complicated than that.
Well, what's interesting to me is you have what I would consider to be two very large hurdles that a lot of people would use as complaining points for business growth. One is you're in what could be called a legacy business only because it's been around for so long as an industry. And so as a result, it's easy to feel like some other thing, that whatever the new shiny apple is, will supplant you. But the other is, and this kind of takes us back to something you were talking about earlier, but I want to circle back to it because I think it's really valuable, is you were talking about like the age of your staff. And this is something that's really interesting to me because I have a relatively young staff. Yours is probably even younger than mine from a team structure standpoint. I'm sure that it is. And it reminds me a lot of like a Chick-fil-A type situation where
yes,
you can go to Burger King or McDonald's or whatever, basically any other fast food place, and ultimately not have great service. And then when you go to Chick-fil-A, you are going to have great service. And they are going to say my pleasure after you say thank you. And they're going to say have a blessed day. And they're the same age people. Like it's the same population they're hiring from the McDonald's that's across the street. And yet somehow they're able to produce these people that are, like you said, happy. I mean, what is it that you guys do that helps you? Is it just in the hiring phase? Are you just good at selecting the right people, or is it a cultural nurturing that's happening, or is it both?
It's a cultural recognition of what happy is, and then the commitment to teach happy or reinforce happy. I don't think we could ever make someone that's unhappy happy.
Yeah.
In terms of, if they have pieces of their lives. But at the same time, if somebody's inherently a happy person, but has just, honestly just been dogged on their whole life, or have bad living situations, and so many of our, teenage people, their parents are in a bad way. They don't have a great home life. Sometimes you can find happiness where you're at. And sometimes we're the escape for staff as well as our guests. So when you're in the location-based entertainment business like bowling, you're an oasis for your guests. And we always treat it that way. But we're also an oasis for our staff. So if something's not great at school, if something's not great at home, when you come in the door, it can be great.
Wow.
And I think we do everything we can to make that happen. And I think that Chick-fil-A does everything they can to make that happen, because we do share the same people. And they do a wonderful job of teaching people how to be successful in their situation.
Yeah.
And another part of that is really doing everything you can to help them realize their goals as well, and their life goals. So when we have so many students and someone is, earned their way to college or what have you, and they leave us, we're not sad, we're happy.
Yeah.
When somebody works for us through college and achieves their degree and goes on to, work at an agency or work, at a, as an engineer or an accountant or whatever, we're happy. And we feel that we can be influential with them as young people and give them success no matter what they do later in life.
That's awesome.
That's something we've always embraced. And it's a real big piece of our success is that, as long as we support people being happy when they're in our doors, that we'll be really happy for them when they're moving on. And the other part of it too, it's hard to be unhappy or hard to be happy if you don't get paid. And we tend to always pay on the higher end of that entry level position. And I think that Chick-fil-A does as well. And that's part of what they do and they can afford to do that. And we can afford to do that by being good stewards of our business. And, we never compete on price. That's really important in our business. Plenty of people go down the slippery slope of always trying to compete on price, where we truly, by taking care of people, staff-wise and guest-wise, it's our experience that creates the value. And we're the most expensive bowling center in town, to be very honest. And not that we target that either.
Right.
But we focus more on building value for the experience than we do on price. And, that goes hand in hand with keeping our staff happy.
I love that even in your logo, and those of you that are listening on the podcast can't see this, but you can go to pinchasers.net and go see it. You have a little bowling ball that even has a smiley face on it. So even that happiness element that you've been talking about is reinforced all the way across the brand. It reminds me a lot of anybody out there that's not read this book, you should go get it. It's called Excellence Wins by Horace Schultz. He's the co-founder of Ritz-Carlton. And what you're talking about, Anthony, reminds me a lot of the story that he told. And this is actually where Truett Cathy at Chick-fil-A got the idea of using my pleasure and have a blessed day. It actually came from Horace Schultz in a meeting that they were having together. And he said at Ritz-Carlton, the language that we use matters a lot. And as a result, we say that we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. I don't care if it's the person that's in the back of the kitchen washing the pots. That person knows that they're a lady or a gentleman serving ladies and gentlemen. And the other thing that reminded me a lot of what you said about the authority to make people happy, or kind of the permission really to make people happy. They have a similar thing where every team member at a Ritz-Carlton basically has the ability to make a decision up to a very large sum. Now, granted, it's a luxury brand, but still, they don't need to go ask a manager or talk to somebody else. And they all know that their number one priority, in their case, it's not happiness, it's treat the customer in a way that they're going to want to come back, which is kind of the same thing to some extent. And I mean, when I read that, I thought, wow, what an idea. And Horace basically was like, if I go in the back of any kitchen at a Ritz-Carlton and ask the person washing the pots what their number one priority is, they will say to wash these pots in a way that makes people want to come back. And I was like, that is awesome. And that's kind of what you're saying. That's kind of what you're saying.
Well, I want to shed some light on that. So I too have used Ritz-Carlton and read about their experience and their commitment in another book. And one of the motivating books that we used in the brand formation time for Pen Chasers was a book called The Experience Economy by Joseph Pine and James Gilmore. And they illustrate some of the Ritz-Carlton experience in that book. There's been a number of other ones that draw attention to Ritz-Carlton. I remember the story of, how a concierge and front desk person, somebody had asked for a certain brand of, drink or something like that. And he went out on his own time, on his own money, and went to buy this for the guest at the hotel. And, it's stuff like that. And, our staff will do the same, quite honestly. If you ask for a liquor at our bar that we don't have, we give them the authority to take money out of the till and go find it. And we'll handle, the aspects of it later, because quite honestly, it's against the law in Florida to just go buy a bottle of liquor and sell it. But we'll do what we can to make them happy.
Right.
And we'll work out those other details later, which we do, but to be compliant. But the Experience Economy by Joseph Pine and James Gilmore was really the first time that we learned about how we're going to be a contemporary business with bowling as a background and be able to survive and do well. And then another story and book that I read years ago was about a deli in Flint, Michigan called Zingerman's. And they have this little, 80-page book. But the attention to people in detail in that book about how they run their deli, and I'm pretty sure they're, a world-renowned deli now.
Yep.
That people know about. But that little book had so many good ideas on how to organize what's important to your business and how they present it to their staff and their guests. And it's, part of their success. And we certainly, we're never too proud to borrow. And we borrow readily from people who are having success, especially from the, the hospitality and entertainment world of business. We'll do everything we can to use it to our advantage as well.
Yeah, I think that's wise. I mean, the fastest way to scale in a lot of cases is to model after those who have already been successful. I mean, that's what I think most successful people do. And then they learn to make it their own. None of us want to be carbon copies of some other business, but there's no reason that we should reinvent the wheel if somebody else has found something that works really well. That's good advice. We are running out of time, but I always like to hit on this last subject before we wrap up. So 2 last questions, and then we will call this an episode. The first one will be around work-life balance. Everybody asks about this, talks about this. I don't even really love the term that much, but I want to hear your perspective on what that even means to you and how that's changed over different seasons of life. And then the last question will be any kind of parting advice or thoughts you would give to aspiring entrepreneurs or business owners who are trying to build a business that lasts. So first one, work-life balance. What does that term mean to you, and how has that changed over different seasons of life?
Sure. I think it goes into our framework for people. And if you recall, when we first discussed it today, our people equation is staff, family, and guests. And for myself, family, I got married very late at 34. And I'm 53 now. And I have always committed to organize my business life to never miss anything. And sometimes I miss, and I don't beat myself up about it, but I coach every team that my sons play for. I have two boys that are 10 years apart, and I do everything I possibly can to be influential in their life on a daily basis for my sons and my wife. And everything that's good in business happens because of that. And, for the guy who sweats, being away from the job or being away from the business to go watch or go coach, a little league baseball team or a bowling team or what have you, I've made more connections that have helped my business being in those other environments than I do in the buildings at times. So never miss an opportunity to be somewhere else, especially with family as the context, and make that very important. And that creates that balance. I don't like that term work-life balance either. I just like to say that, family is part of our people equation, and we make sure that we support that from our staff as well. And about the only thing I kind of insist on from a rule standpoint for our staff is that they take their vacations. And many times in the hospitality arena, especially, people can trade their vacation for money and things like that. I will never do the last week. So if they've earned 2 weeks of vacation, they have to get out of the building for at least one of those weeks. I'll pay 1 week of vacation, but I won't pay any more than that. And I want them to be outside and doing the things that matter, so that they can be happy and make sure the people who walk in the door and pay us are happy as well.
That's really good. All this talk about happiness, and I'm literally smiling on the other side just thinking about it, because it is just so encouraging to hear stories like this of, I think so many times people think that the focus has to be so focused on just the numbers. Now we got to know our numbers, but it's about the people. And at the end of the day, it turns out that when you actually care about people and everybody's working towards the same goal, it can produce amazingly successful, thriving businesses. And that's what's happened for you guys. And I always tell people, especially when it comes to the family stuff, and I have to tell myself this a lot of times too, to be honest, is, when we lose, or if we lose money, we can always go get more of it. But when we lose time, especially time with those that we care about and love about, we don't get that back. And so when we have opportunities to do that, like actually this is happening to me right now. Monday, I had a really full schedule. I had a lot of stuff going on, but the kids also have a holiday, so they don't have school on Monday. And my wife was like, we have Universal passes down in Orlando. My wife was like, let's go take the kids to Universal. I'm like, I got a really full day. But I've also was gone a lot this week. And I thought, you know what? I have the power to clear my schedule on Monday, and all those meetings can get done the next day or the day after or the day after that. But I got 5 kids who I can take to Universal on Monday, and it works out for them and for her. I should do that instead. And I've just found it's
good for you.
Thanks. I've just found it's worth making those decisions, even when it's hard and there's a lot of stuff going on in business. I think I've had so many times where I've thought, well, once I get through this project, then I'll have time. And there's just always another project.
Absolutely. And those things change over time.
Yeah.
I would say if you're in the incubator stage and you're an entrepreneur and you're developing a business that hasn't come into fruition yet, your life, can be different in that manner. But when you, if you have a business that's operating, if you cannot be away to do something with your family, then you haven't built a very good business yet.
You just have a job. You don't have a business at that point.
No, and you won't build it if you don't take those times, to make the other people in your life happy.
That's
it
right.
won't work.
Well, Anthony, I really appreciated the just insights you've given. I know I've learned a lot. I think people listening have learned a lot that they can apply to their businesses as well. If there was any parting advice that you would give people about building a business that lasts, what is it that comes to mind?
Focus on the people. No matter what widget you do, no matter what business you're in, whether it be the digital landscape or hospitality, I haven't seen anybody who is not focused on people, and people being staff, family, and guests. There's just no way to be relevant to anyone if you're not doing that. So I think focusing on the people side and the people equation is where value is driven. And I think that's where, everyone has an opportunity to be relevant and to be worth spending money on. And it doesn't really change much from that. Everybody has their expertise and what they do to be compelling, but at the end of the day, it's not going to be long lasting if it's not focused on people.
That's great. That's wise counsel. Well, I know next time I am in the Tampa Bay area, I'm going to bring my kiddos to a Pin Chasers so we can experience what happy bowling is like. Anthony, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Jay.
If y'all want to find Anthony's company and take a look at Pin Chasers, go visit one of their locations. You can find them online at pinchasers.net. Get all the info about them and see their happy, smiling bowly ball. Thanks for listening, and good luck with building a business that lasts. Hey, I hope this video has helped you with some tips and ideas to build a business that lasts. Make sure you subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss out on the next videos that we roll out. And more importantly, for some awesome free resources, head over to our website at buildingabusinessthatlasts.com. You can get a free copy of my book there where I tell you how I have built an agency that's grown year over year for the last 20 years in a row. So go grab that, buildingabusinessthatlasts.com, and make sure to subscribe to our channel. Thanks. We'll see you soon.